When an empath truly ceases to be everyone's emotional echo and courageously begins to perceive the raw, unvarnished truth of their own being, something profoundly transformative unfolds. Carl Jung, with his deep wisdom, observed this remarkable alchemy. They don't descend into selfishness, but rather ascend into a formidable power. This power isn't a threat to others, but to the very systems and dynamics that have, for so long, thrived on their boundless generosity and silent self-sacrifice. Jung named this profound internal revolution individuation, the arduous yet ultimately liberating journey to become one's whole, undivided self. This journey of individuation is perhaps the most revolutionary act an empath can undertake in a world often built on the quiet erosion of their inner strength. Imagine that pivotal moment, the precise instant everything shifts. You might be sitting in quiet solitude, perhaps after another day spent navigating a labyrinth of other people's emotional currents, feeling utterly depleted. You've uttered yes when every fiber of your being screamed no. You've painted a smile over your own heartache, solely to maintain the fragile comfort of those around you. You've absorbed their anxieties and angers until your own nervous system felt like a live wire, humming with an unbearable intensity. But this time, something is different. Instead of merely enduring, you pause. A sacred stillness descends, and within that quiet space, a question, primal and profound, emerges. What if I stopped? This isn't just a question. It is, as Jung described, the very genesis of consciousness. And for the empath brave enough to truly confront it, to answer it with unvarnished honesty, there is no return to the comfortable shadows of ignorance. The path forward is illuminated, even if daunting. Yet, here lies a truth Jung uncovered that remains largely unspoken in our world. The empath's unparalleled ability to feel everything, to intuitively grasp the emotional landscapes of others, is not, in its raw, unfiltered state, a pure gift. Instead, it is often a deeply ingrained survival sensitivity, a complex trauma response skillfully disguised as compassion. Jung meticulously documented this recurring pattern in his clinical practice, observing how this heightened receptivity could paradoxically become a cage. He famously wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But for many empaths, this privilege remains just out of reach, for they have never truly learned who they are when stripped of the emotional echoes of others. Their identity has become a tapestry woven from the threads of external needs and feelings. Let me illuminate what genuinely transpires in that first blinding flash of awakening. The empath doesn't gently ease into self-awareness. Rather, they experience what Jung termed the collision with the unconscious. It's an abrupt, often jarring recognition that their entire identity, their very sense of self, has been meticulously constructed upon a pervasive lie. The insidious lie that they are irrevocably and eternally responsible for the emotional well-being of everyone else. Jung meticulously chronicled this precise dynamic within his groundbreaking work on individuation, noting that highly sensitive individuals frequently develop what he called inflated compassion. They become subtly, often unconsciously, addicted to being needed, for it has been the sole conduit through which they've learned to feel valuable, worthy, or even simply visible. But when this fragile bubble of false identity finally bursts, not with a whimper, but with a liberating explosion, something truly extraordinary begins. The authentic, untamed self, long suppressed and patiently waiting, finally starts to emerge, like a phoenix from the ashes of expectation. This is where Jung's work becomes profoundly revolutionary for empaths. He unveiled the truth that within every human psyche resides what he termed the shadow, a vast, often uncomfortable repository of all the aspects of ourselves we've disowned, rejected, or meticulously hidden away from conscious view. Yet, for empaths, this shadow harbors something that often takes others by surprise: a potent, undiluted reservoir of rage, not the destructive, uncontrolled fury of a villain, but a primal, righteous indignation at having been consistently used, subtly manipulated, and carelessly taken for granted. It is the suppressed roar of a soul that has been silenced for far too long. Jung, with his characteristic insight, penned, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." For the empath, this darkness is not inherently evil. It is the sacred container of their long-suppressed anger, their repeatedly denied needs, and their deliberately silenced voice. And when they finally dare to confront, acknowledge, and embrace this potent shadow, everything irrevocably shifts. The empath who courageously unearths their shadow does not, contrary to fears, become cruel or cold. They become, instead, what I call consciously selective. They begin to perceive the subtle, insidious manipulation tactics that were once utterly invisible to their accommodating gaze. They instinctively recognize emotional vampires, those who drain their life force without reciprocation. They learn to distinguish with crystal clarity between genuine, urgent need and cleverly manufactured crises designed to elicit their endless supply of emotional energy. This isn't cynicism. It is the profound clarity that comes from seeing with unclouded eyes, a profound discernment that acts as an inner shield. Jung identified specific, unmistakable patterns that manifest when highly sensitive individuals embark upon their journey of individuation, what I term the 8 signs of conscious awakening. If you find yourself nodding in recognition as you read these, you are experiencing what Jung powerfully called the birth of psychological sovereignty, the glorious reclamation of your inner kingdom. Sign 1. The energy shift. The very first, and often most palpable, indicator is a profound energy reversal. Instead of your vital life force perpetually flowing outward, constantly being siphoned off by the demands and needs of others, it begins to pool back inward, gathering strength and vitality within your own core. Jung meticulously observed this phenomenon in his patients. When individuals finally cease to unconsciously hemorrhage their life force, they suddenly discover an abundance of energy for themselves, for their own dreams, their own passions. You'll notice you no longer feel utterly drained after social interactions. You stop automatically absorbing everyone else's bad moods, their anxieties, their unresolved issues. Most crucially, the suffocating cloak of guilt you once felt for simply having boundaries begins to dissolve. As Jung beautifully articulated, your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. If you've ever been told you're too sensitive, understand that your sensitivity is not a flaw. It is a finely tuned instrument, a profound gift awaiting conscious stewardship. What's truly remarkable is that others often sense this subtle yet profound shift in your energetic signature long before you consciously acknowledge it. They perceive that you are no longer passively available to be their emotional dumping ground, and some, unfortunately, will inevitably attempt to manipulate or guilt you back into your old, accommodating role. Sign 2. The mask falls away. Jung famously called it the death of the persona, the elaborate social mask we meticulously craft and wear to seamlessly blend in, to fulfill expected roles. For empaths, this persona is almost invariably the perpetually nice one, the unfailingly helpful one, the one who could never, ever utter the word no. But as individuation takes root, this meticulously maintained mask becomes an unbearable burden, an impossible charade. You begin, tentatively at first, then with increasing confidence, to articulate what you genuinely think and feel, rather than simply echoing what you believe others desire to hear. You start expressing your own preferences, your own desires, instead of passively deferring to everyone else's whims. You admit, without apology, when you are genuinely tired, rather than feigning an endless reservoir of energy. This courageous act of self-revelation often terrifies those who have comfortably benefited from your previous self-erasure. Jung, ever the realist, warned about the profound discomfort of this phase. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Yet, for the awakening empath, this radical self-acceptance blossoms into a truth far more vital and nourishing than any fleeting social approval. Sign 3. The projection returns. This is where Jung's profound understanding of the human psyche becomes absolutely indispensable. He revealed that we frequently project our own intrinsic qualities, our own unmet needs, onto others, often onto those who simply don't possess them. Empaths, with their vast capacity for empathy, often project their own inherent sensitivity, their profound depth, their immense capacity for genuine, unconditional care onto individuals who, in reality, are devoid of such qualities. They see potential where none exists, a glimmer of light in eyes that hold only shadows. But during individuation, what I call projection recall occurs. The shimmering veil of illusion lifts. You stop seeing only the potential in others and begin to perceive their reality, their true intentions, their authentic selves. You cease making elaborate excuses for consistently poor or selfish behavior. You stop clinging to the comforting but false belief that everyone is just misunderstood deep down. Jung wrote, with profound clarity, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. The awakening empath finally understands that they were so deeply irritated, perhaps even repulsed, by the selfishness they perceived in others precisely because they had, for so long, ruthlessly suppressed their own healthy, vital selfishness, the inherent right to prioritize their own well-being. Sign 4. Boundaries become sacred. Jung observed that individuals who achieve true psychological maturity inevitably develop what he called a personal relationship with the unconscious. For empaths, this translates into finely tuning into their own subtle internal signals, their inner compass, rather than being perpetually swayed and dictated by external demands. You begin, with quiet conviction, to utter no without feeling the compulsive need to offer elaborate, apologetic explanations. You shed the burdensome guilt for simply having your own needs, your own desires, your own limits. You recognize with liberating clarity that those who react with anger or indignation to your newly established boundaries were, in fact, benefiting immensely from your previous lack of them. This isn't selfishness in its detrimental form. Jung termed it individual integrity. The awakening empath discovers what I call sacred selfishness, the profound understanding that nurturing and prioritizing yourself is not merely acceptable, but absolutely essential for forging authentic, truly reciprocal relationships with others. It is the foundation of genuine connection. Sign 5. The guilt disappears. This particular sign can be the most astonishing, even shocking, for empaths. The crushing, pervasive guilt they've carried for so long, the guilt for daring to have needs, for taking up space, for occasionally disappointing others, begins, miraculously, to evaporate. Jung referred to this as the integration of the shadow. When you cease to reject and disown parts of yourself, you simultaneously cease to feel guilty for the fundamental act of being human with all its inherent imperfections and vulnerabilities. You realize, with profound clarity, that this pervasive guilt was often a subtle, yet potent, response to other people's manipulative tactics, a silent weapon wielded against your innate kindness. When someone now says, in a tone dripping with disappointment, "You've changed," instead of rushing to reassure them, you find yourself thinking, with quiet power, "Yes, I have." And that, precisely, is the point. Jung wrote, the individual has always been unconscious of himself, and has remained so. But the awakening empath becomes profoundly conscious of their own inherent worth. a worth that stands entirely independent of others' shifting opinions or conditional acceptance. Sign 6. Authenticity over approval. Jung's individuation process ultimately culminates in what he termed self-actualization, the courageous act of living authentically from your deepest core rather than being perpetually dictated by external expectations or societal pressures. For empaths, this means consciously choosing authenticity over the fleeting comfort of approval, even when that choice carries the painful cost of certain relationships. You stop performing emotions you don't genuinely feel, like an actor perpetually on stage. You cease pretending to agree when your inner voice screams dissent. You stop forcing laughter at jokes that aren't funny, simply to make others feel at ease. This radical authenticity is, paradoxically, magnetically attractive to some, yet profoundly threatening to others. If people started treating you differently when you finally found your backbone, it's because they sensed the shift before you even consciously articulated it. The awakening empath learns what I call authentic magnetism, the profound truth that when you stop desperately trying to be liked by everyone, you become genuinely and irresistibly attractive to the right people, to your true tribe. Sign 7. The healer heals themselves. Jung discovered that a significant number of individuals drawn to healing professions are often what he eloquently called wounded healers. They dedicate themselves to alleviating the suffering of others, often as a subconscious means of deflecting or avoiding their own unresolved pain. But during the sacred journey of individuation, empaths, for the very first time, turn their immense healing gifts inward. You begin to ask, with genuine curiosity and compassion, "What do I need?" instead of the lifelong refrain of, "What does everyone else need?" You start lovingly nurturing your own inner child, the vulnerable core within you, rather than perpetually parenting every adult in your orbit. You recognize, with a poignant clarity, that you simply cannot pour endlessly from an empty cup, and for many years, your cup has been bone dry. Jung's timeless words resonate. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. The awakening empath finally grants themselves the sacred permission to discover who that truly integrated self is, utterly separate from their lifelong role as everyone's indispensable emotional caretaker. Sign 8. Conscious connection. The culminating sign of this profound transformation is what Jung called conscious relationship, the rare and beautiful ability to connect deeply and authentically with others, without, in the process, losing your own precious self. The awakening empath develops what I term boundaried compassion. They can still feel profound empathy for others. Their hearts remain open, but they no longer unconsciously absorb and internalize those emotions. You begin to effortlessly attract individuals who instinctively respect your boundaries, who honor your space, rather than those who have historically exploited your innate kindness. You cultivate relationships founded on mutual respect, genuine reciprocity, and shared growth, rather than the imbalanced, one-sided giving that once defined your connections. You learn to love others fiercely, authentically, without feeling the overwhelming, often exhausting, need to save them. If you've reached that powerful point where you can read people with profound accuracy, yet no longer need their approval or validation, you have truly arrived. Jung observed that individuation invariably leads to deeper, more authentic, and more fulfilling connections, precisely because you are finally relating to the world as your true, unmasked self, not your carefully constructed performing self. However, Jung never romanticized this arduous process. He famously likened it to the night sea journey, a profound, often disorienting period of loss, confusion, and deep psychological descent that is absolutely essential for true rebirth. For empaths, this particular phase can feel like an existential death, because in many profound ways, it is the agonizing, yet ultimately liberating, death of the false self. the identity meticulously constructed around the relentless imperative of pleasing others. You might experience the painful loss of friends who only cherished the version of you that served their needs. You might grapple with intense loneliness as you learn, for the very first time, to truly be alone with yourself, to find solace in your own company. You might grieve deeply for relationships that were never truly founded on genuine love or mutual respect, but rather on your perceived usefulness. Jung, in his profound wisdom, penned, "No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." The awakening empath must bravely descend into their own psychological underworld, their personal abyss, before they can truly ascend into the radiant light of authentic selfhood. Jung was one of the pioneering psychologists to recognize the intricate, undeniable connection between the mind and the body. For empaths, years of perpetually absorbing and internalizing the turbulent emotions of others often creates what I term energetic toxicity, an insidious buildup that can manifest as chronic fatigue, debilitating anxiety, persistent digestive issues, and even autoimmune problems. But when empaths finally liberate themselves from the relentless cycle of people-pleasing, their bodies, miraculously, begin to heal. The hypervigilant nervous system, long on high alert, at last begins to relax and recalibrate. Sleep deepens and becomes more restorative. Chronic pain often diminishes, sometimes entirely dissipating. Jung profoundly understood that psychological healing and physical healing are inextricably intertwined, two sides of the same sacred coin. Your magnificent body was never designed to perpetually process everyone else's emotional waste. When you cease to be the world's emotional landfill, your health naturally, gracefully, begins its journey of restoration. Jung observed that individuation always, without exception, profoundly alters relationships. Some deepen, blossoming into richer, more authentic bonds, while others, inevitably, fall away. For empaths, this sorting process can be profoundly painful, yet it is an absolutely necessary crucible for growth. What I call the Great Relationship Purge meticulously separates authentic, soul-nourishing connections from exploitative, draining ones. People who genuinely love you will gracefully adapt to your new boundaries and wholeheartedly celebrate your blossoming growth. Those who vehemently resist your courageous changes were, in all likelihood, covertly benefiting from your previous self-neglect. Jung termed this the crucial differentiation between genuine love and neurotic attachment. You will discover, with stunning clarity, that many of your past relationships were built upon an unspoken, unconscious contract. You would provide endless emotional support, and they, in return, would offer conditional acceptance. When you courageously break this silent contract by reclaiming your own life, your own sovereignty, some people will undoubtedly choose to leave. Let them. Their departure is not a loss, but a liberation. Here's what Jung discovered that truly changes everything. When empaths finally cease to be everyone's emotional sponge, they do not, as many fear, lose their innate sensitivity. On the contrary, they develop what I call conscious sensitivity. They retain their profound capacity to feel deeply, to intuit the unspoken, but now they possess the sovereign power to choose what to absorb and what to gracefully release. This conscious sensitivity transforms from a vulnerability into an extraordinary superpower. You can now accurately read complex situations, discerning truth from illusion, without being overwhelmed or engulfed by them. You can offer genuine, effective help to others without depleting your own precious reserves. You can love deeply, fiercely, authentically, without ever losing the sacred core of who you are. Jung called this differentiated consciousness, the profound ability to maintain your unwavering center while simultaneously connecting meaningfully with the world. The awakening empath becomes what Jung termed a conscious individual, someone who can navigate the intricate tapestry of the world with their sensitivity gloriously intact yet their boundaries powerfully strong and unyielding. Jung firmly believed that individual transformation is the fertile ground from which collective change blossoms. When one person courageously becomes conscious, it implicitly grants others the unspoken permission to embark on their own awakening. The empath who stops people-pleasing doesn't merely transform their own life, they brilliantly model a different, more authentic way of being for everyone fortunate enough to be in their orbit. Your courage to establish clear, firm boundaries ignites a spark of courage in others, empowering them to define their own limits. Your steadfast refusal to absorb everyone else's emotional burdens demonstrates, with quiet power, that they are inherently capable of taking responsibility for their own feelings. Your authentic self-expression reminds them, gently yet powerfully, that they do not need to perform, to pretend, or to sacrifice their truth to be inherently worthy of love. Jung's timeless words resonate. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But this profound transformation can only occur when at least one person shows up, utterly and unapologetically as their authentic self. Jung identified specific, immutable principles that guide individuated people, what I call the conscious empath's code. These are 5 foundational principles that ensure the maintenance of psychological sovereignty, while simultaneously fostering deep, meaningful connection with others. First, feel everything, absorb nothing. Your emotions are intrinsically yours. Their emotions are unequivocally theirs. Second, give from overflow, never from depletion. Your generosity should flow from an abundant wellspring, not from an arid, barren landscape. Third, love others without losing yourself. Your capacity for love is infinite, but your selfhood is sacred and non-negotiable. Fourth, help when inspired, not when guilty. Let your actions be guided by genuine inspiration, not by the insidious sting of obligation or manipulation. Fifth, trust your inner knowing over external pressure. Your intuition is your most reliable compass. Honor its whispers above the clamor of external demands. These are not rigid rules, but rather luminous guidelines for maintaining what Jung called authentic being. In a world that, all too often, subtly profits from your unconsciousness, your self-abandonment, Jung understood, with crystal clarity, that society frequently labels individual consciousness as selfish, precisely because unconscious people benefit immensely from others' self-neglect. When empaths courageously begin to prioritize their own needs, they are often met with accusations of becoming cold, uncaring, or distant. But Jung made a crucial distinction, a vital nuance. There exists both healthy selfishness and unhealthy selfishness. Healthy selfishness is the profound act of taking full responsibility for your own happiness, your own well-being, instead of making others perpetually responsible for it. It means having permeable, respectful boundaries instead of impenetrable walls. It means embracing self-care as a sacred ritual instead of succumbing to self-abandonment. The awakening empath learns, with liberating clarity, that taking compassionate care of themselves is not a selfish act. It is an utterly essential one. You cannot, truly, pour from an empty cup, and most empaths have been running on empty, on fumes, for far too many years. Jung's expansive concept of individuation includes what he called the inner marriage, the profound integration of masculine and feminine psychological principles within a single, whole person. For empaths, this translates into gracefully balancing their innate receptivity, their deep capacity to feel, with a healthy, empowered assertiveness. You learn not only to give energy, but also to receive it with open hands and an open heart. You develop the quiet strength to utter no with conviction, as well as the joyful capacity to say yes with enthusiasm. You integrate your nurturing nature with your profound, inherent need for independence, for autonomy. Jung termed this psychological wholeness, the radiant state where you no longer desperately need someone else to complete you because you have diligently, lovingly learned to complete yourself. The awakening empath discovers, with awe, that they can embody both softness and strength, both profound caring and unwavering boundaries, both exquisite sensitivity and absolute sovereignty. Jung recognized that highly sensitive individuals possess truly unique and extraordinary gifts, particularly when they learn to manage their sensitivity consciously, with intention and wisdom. What I call the empath's arsenal refers to the powerful abilities that emerge and blossom when sensitivity is skillfully channeled rather than ruthlessly suppressed. Intuitive accuracy, once clouded by the emotional debris of others, becomes razor-sharp, a potent inner knowing. Creative expression, long stifled by the drain of emotional vampires, now flows with vibrant, uninhibited energy. Deep, profoundly meaningful relationships begin to form organically as you effortlessly attract individuals who resonate with your authentic frequency rather than those who seek to exploit your kindness. Jung wrote, "Your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart." The conscious empath develops a profound inner vision that pierces through pretense, revealing the naked truth with unwavering clarity. Jung observed that individuation often involves a period of profound loneliness as you courageously separate from unconscious group dynamics and codependent patterns. For empaths, this loneliness can be particularly intense, a desolate echo. You've spent your entire life enmeshed, surrounded by people who constantly needed you, and now you are learning, for the very first time, to simply be alone with yourself. But Jung drew a vital distinction between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is the piercing pain of feeling disconnected from others, a gnawing emptiness. Solitude, by contrast, is the profound joy of being deeply connected to yourself, a sacred communion. The awakening empath learns, with quiet delight, to cherish and enjoy their own company for the very first time. In the sanctuary of solitude, you finally hear your own authentic thoughts, unadulterated by the clamor of others' emotions. You discover your own true preferences, unburdened by the crushing weight of others' expectations. You meet yourself, perhaps for the first time, in the quiet, sacred space of your own being. Jung's individuation process doesn't culminate in a perpetual withdrawal from the world. Rather, it leads to a conscious, empowered re-engagement. The awakening empath returns to relationships and community, but now from a place of deliberate choice, not compulsive obligation. You offer help to others when it feels genuinely authentic, when it aligns with your truth, not when you are coerced by guilt. You engage in social situations when you genuinely desire connection, not when you are driven by the fear of rejection or abandonment. You generously offer your unique gifts to the world from a place of overflowing abundance, not from a desperate, aching need to be needed. Jung called this conscious participation, engaging with life as your true, sovereign self, rather than your carefully constructed performing self. Jung understood that psychological development is rarely, if ever, linear. It unfolds in profound, cyclical patterns. The awakening empath will inevitably face ongoing challenges as they steadfastly maintain their boundaries and continue to express their authentic self. There will be moments of self-doubt, times when the siren call of old, comfortable patterns tempts you back into familiar territory. But each cycle deepens your understanding, each challenge strengthens your resolve, and each boundary you courageously maintain makes the next one inherently easier. Jung termed this spiral development, the revisiting of similar themes at ever deeper levels of consciousness. The key is to recognize these recurring cycles as an inherent, vital part of your magnificent growth, not as evidence of failure or regression. Jung believed that individuation inherently creates responsibility. When you bravely heal yourself, you naturally, organically, feel a profound desire to help others heal. But the conscious empath's mission now looks fundamentally different from their old people-pleasing patterns. Instead of attempting to rescue people, you model healthy boundaries with quiet dignity. Instead of absorbing their pain, you hold sacred space for their own growth and evolution. Instead of frantically fixing their problems, you trust implicitly in their innate ability to discover their own profound solutions. This is what Jung called authentic service, helping from a place of profound wholeness rather than from a place of woundedness. You become a radiant lighthouse, providing steady illumination for those who are ready and willing to see. But you no longer frantically chase ships in the dark, trying to save those who are not yet ready to be saved. Jung's ultimate, overarching goal was the realization of the self, not merely the ego or the persona, but the integrated, magnificent totality of who you are in all your complex glory. For empaths, achieving this profound integration means courageously embracing all aspects of themselves: the sensitive and the strong, the caring and the fierce, the generous giver and the graceful receiver. You no longer apologize for feeling deeply, for intuiting truths others miss. You do not suppress your extraordinary intuitive gifts. You embrace your magnificent complexity, rather than attempting to force yourself into simplistic, narrow categories. Jung's enduring words echo through time. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. The integrated empath is a breathtaking tapestry of power and gentleness, open-heartedness and unwavering boundaries, profound connection and absolute sovereignty. So, here is the truth I implore you to understand. Your sensitivity is not your weakness. It is your most profound, often underestimated, strength. Your boundaries are not selfishness. They are a sacred act of self-respect, a declaration of your inherent worth. Your authenticity is not too much. It is, in fact, exactly right, a perfectly calibrated expression of your unique soul. Jung dedicated his entire life to meticulously studying the intricate, heroic process of becoming whole, and he discovered, unequivocally, that it always demands courage, the unwavering courage to gently disappoint others in order to remain fiercely true to yourself. The quiet courage to choose solitude over betraying your deepest values. The radical courage to choose the sometimes uncomfortable path of growth over the seductive ease of comfort. If you recognize yourself in these 8 luminous signs, know that you are already walking the sacred path Jung so brilliantly mapped out over a century ago. Trust the process. Trust your deepest instincts. Trust that becoming who you truly are is not merely your inherent right. It is your most profound, sacred responsibility. If these patterns of transformation resonate deep within your soul, then affirm this truth. My breaking point became my breakthrough. When an empath finally stops pleasing everyone and begins, with clear eyes, to see the truth of their own being, they don't become selfish, they become sovereign. They don't lose their boundless compassion. They simply learn, at last, to graciously include themselves within its warm embrace. They don't cease caring for others. They begin, profoundly, to care for themselves, too. This is Jung's timeless gift to every empath who has ever felt the crushing weight of being everyone's emotional caretaker. You do not have to carry the world's pain to prove your inherent goodness. You do not have to sacrifice yourself endlessly to be deserving of love. You can be exquisitely sensitive and powerfully strong, deeply caring and firmly boundaried, profoundly empathic and fiercely authentic. The world in its yearning doesn't need more depleted empaths. It desperately needs conscious ones, empaths who give from a place of joyous choice, not compulsive obligation, who help from an overflowing abundance, not gnawing emptiness, who love others deeply, profoundly, without ever abandoning the sacred sanctuary of themselves. Your journey from people-pleaser to conscious empath is not just a personal transformation, it is a quiet, profound revolution, and Jung, without a doubt, would be immensely proud.